The next laureate is the laureate in Arts and Philosophy, Ms. Fukumi Shimura. Ms. Fukumi Shimura, would you please come to the stage? Before the lecture, we will introduce her profile on the stage screen. Ms. Fukumi Shimura was born in 1924 in Omi-Hachiman, Shiga Prefecture. When she was 2 years old, she was adopted by her uncle and started living in Tokyo. While she was a child, she loved fairy tales, and she hoped to write beautiful stories and fairy tales herself. Her adoptive father was working with a major shipping company, and with the kind adoptive mother, she was taken care of very well. In her late teens, she found out about her natural parents and siblings. Her real mother was weaving, and therefore she became strongly attracted to the world of weaving herself. In 1955, Ms. Shimura met Muneyoshi Yanagi, a philosopher of Mingei folkcraft movement, whom her mother has deeply respected, and decided to start weaving. Mingei philosophy discovered beauty in everyday, ordinary, utilitarian objects used by common people. Since she began weaving, she exhibited the obi work at the Japan Traditional Art Crafts exhibition and won a prize. The following year, she also received a prize with her artwork, Autumn Mist, weaved with pongee yarn. Maintaining the simplicity of tsumugi pongee yarn by finely weaving the dyed yarns, she created a unique texture and drew much attention with her work. One of the characteristics of her work is her strong feelings about colors. Synthesized dyes are prevalent nowadays, but she still insists on using natural dyeing with plants. After trial and error, she has come up with the use of colorful yarns representing the nature, and has come up with her own tsumugi weaving. Colors coming from the plants are not just colors, but they represent the plant life. That's what she thought. Ms. Shimura, in her practice, tried to learn from the theory of colors of Goethe and Steiner, and after deeply studying the views of color in Japanese classical usage, she has become to understand the need to give importance on the colors, and also she represents the tsumugi philosophy that is closely related to the surrounding nature. Since 1968, she has set up a studio in Sagano, Kyoto Prefecture, and last year she has set up an art school called Ars Shimura in Okazaki, Kyoto, not only to transmit the spirit and the technology as an artist, but to relay to the next generation of artists the respect and appreciation of nature. To the young people, Ms. Shimura says, be aware that you are benefiting from everything in your surrounding. You are even given every grain of rice, every drop of water. Please realize that happiness comes from leading an austere and frugal life. Ms. Shimura loves Kyoto, where she lives, thinking of the city as an irreplaceable town, harmonizing Japan's nature and tradition. Today, we would like to listen to Ms. Shimura, looking back on her past as an artist and her deep relations with colors and nature, and her sense of color as well as the sense of color presented in the Japanese culture. The title of her lecture is Light, Life, and Colors. Ms. Shimura, please. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your coming, in spite of a very busy schedule today. As one who had just continued to do the work I really love, I cannot believe that I'm standing here in front of you. As I have spent my time with Dr. Langer and Dr. Witten over the past couple of days, I was deeply impressed by the great wisdom and the great achievements and research that they have been undertaking. And I truly cannot believe that I am joining them here. But what I have come to feel somewhat is that the place that the great researchers are standing may be really connected to the place that I am standing. And I believe the nature and the world of art may be somewhat in the continuum of the greater research that has been carried out by the greater researchers. So in that hope, I would like to give my lecture today. As I was introduced, I was adopted by my uncle at the age of 2. And of course, that was a fate that I had to accept at an early age. Of course, I was well taken care of, but still, I felt a sort of a vacuum or hole in my heart. And I always felt somewhat lonely, although I was not able to place where that loneliness came from. But when I was 17, I have come to learn that I had natural parents and siblings, older sister, 2 big brothers, and 1 younger sister. And I was thrilled to learn of my connections with these natural parents and siblings, but at the same time, my life was totally changed. It was a great shock. Of course, I think it was just about the right timing. At the age of 17 that I've come to learn of that truth. My heart was filled with darkness, but I all of a sudden became exposed to the natural parents and siblings, and my adoptive mother also told me about the truth. But having come in touch with my natural mother, biological mother, I was all of a sudden exposed to art world, and and religious world, which was something that I never was exposed to under my adoptive parents. And I think the hole in my heart probably was related to the fact that perhaps I was craving for that sort of a world. My older brother was a painter. He was really he loved to paint, and he was he talked about painting, my mother talked about religion, and all of a sudden, under the shock, I was exposed to a totally different world. The younger, well, the second oldest brother was gravely ill. I couldn't go to school. I just stayed home caring for my brother. And it was at that time that I found a loom stowed away in the shed. And when I asked my mother what it was, she told me that she used to learn weaving at Kamigamo Art Craft Association, which was started by Yanagi Soetsu, and she learned under Mr. Aota. And since my father was a general practitioner, she was not able to take up weaving seriously, and therefore she stowed away the loom. But she took out the loom, and we brought that to the bedside of my second oldest brother, and she taught me how to weave. Of course, my brother passed away soon after that. And so after that, I went to a school called the Bunka Gakuin. My oldest brother was studying there, and I joined him in the year of 1941, when the Second World War broke out for Japan. And although there was no school like that before, and there were great artists teaching at that art school with distinguished teachers. Although Japan was totally swept away by the terrors of war, but we didn't have to go to work for doing military-related work. We were able to stay studying at the school. But the president of the school, Mr. Isaku Nishimura, had anti-war ideas, and the school was closed because of that. I was still quite young and didn't realize at that time, but I have come to learn after that that education was indeed important for young people, and also I sympathized with anti-war ideas that Mr. Nishimura expressed. But after we lost the war, I lost my oldest brother, and I was heartbroken, but I got married, and after I got married, I decided to publish a collection of my brother's paintings, and went to Mr. Soetsu Yanagi to see what I can do about that. And he told me perhaps that I should take up weaving following my mother. And I took his advice and decided to pursue the path of weaving, and at the same time decided to get divorced. And I went back to my mother to learn weaving once again. I was a total layperson when it comes to weaving, and therefore I didn't have any teacher as such who could teach me, so I had to start from scratch. But under the Mingei philosophy, Yanagi Soetsu emphasized the plant dyeing and the hand spinning and the bamboo bomb cocoons, bombing cocoons, and I have come to learn the magnificent colors that could be produced by using the plant. I worked intensively for 10 years, and in the meantime, I felt that perhaps colors were not simply colors. There was a big question in my mind. When the plants have such a beautiful green colors, if you try to dye with such plants, you cannot get the green color. You would only end up with a grayish color. Why was it that when you take beautiful red flowers and hope that you can dye yarns with the beautiful red color, you're not able to do that. You end up with a grayish color again. So the color that you want to bring out will not be brought about, even though the plants themselves and flowers themselves have such beautiful green and red colors. And I questioned myself, why was that? I read many books. I tried to learn from the elders and the oral instructions left by the elders, but I nevertheless did not reach any answer. So I tried to talk with one of my friends, and Professor Yoshito Takahashi, who was a researcher studying Goethe, was introduced to me, and he introduced me to Goethe's theory of colors. And when I read that for the first time, really scales fell off my eyes. In other words, it said that the colors are deeds of light, and it was a suffering. I never thought about that, but I was always thinking that the colors were not colors in itself, and it was something else. And so I realized by reading Goethe that I was correct. Green, of course, is a mixture of yellow and blue, and in other words, Goethe said that the yellow being the closest to the color of the light, blue being the color that is closest to darkness, when you mix them together, the third color of green is created, Goethe said. Then why, when you mix yellow and blue, you get green? That was a big question that I had in mind. I work with indigo pots, and when you put in a yarn into the indigo pot, when you pull it out, it turns out of a sudden into a yellowish. When you put in a yellow yarn into the indigo pot, you will get a green color. And so all of a sudden, I realized that what Goethe was saying was really true, and I realized that by working with plants. The color that the plants provide us is given us for free, but I think it represents the life of a plant. So I think the plants are noble in that sense. they would give the color to humans. Human beings are arrogant. They would fell trees and the mountains, and they would pollute the sea and the waters. And human beings tend to pollute the surrounding and the environment, but the plants remain quiet and provide us with infinite number of colors. I was truly moved by that fact and engaged in even further work with plant dyeing. I would like to talk about indigo. Among the plant dyes, usually tree barks or tree trunks will be boiled and simmered, but in case of indigo, the indigo will utilize the process of fermentation, and lies and alcohol will be used to ferment. That is a process that you go through with indigo. And when I first started working, my mother noticed that being driven away by synthetic dyes, such plant dyes and indigo dyeing places were closing down one after another. And one of the places which closed down gave me that indigo pot and mentioned that my mother said that there is the importance of indigo in that there is a great spirit always in need to dye with indigo. And I went to trial and error and did not succeed. I failed a lot of times. Mr. Katano Motohiko, living in Nagoya, was a teacher that told me how to make the liquid indigo. He said that working with indigo is like raising a child, because indigo will bring out the indigo master's own personality. And he talked to me about the nature of indigo, which all of a sudden changed my viewpoint about indigo. And I suddenly understood what my mother was saying when she talked about the spiritual aspect of working with indigo. But of course, I was not successful initially. And my daughter Yoko said she will never get into dyeing and weaving, and she got married and was raising her child. But when she was having a headache in working with indigo, she thought that the fact that I'm having a headache must be something that is worthwhile having a headache about, she thought, and she decided to take up dyeing and weaving herself. So it is almost like a religion and a faith for me, but at the same time, we remained rational in our thinking, and we realized the importance of lye, and therefore we could get hold of high-quality lye so that we were able to dye successfully with indigo. My daughter was monitoring the indigo pots, and she realized that the moonlight was shining through the window, and realized that the indigo in the pot was looking very happy. And she realized that there could be a certain relationship between indigo and the motion of the stars and the moon in particular. And on the next day, she noticed that the color of the indigo was brilliant. And so we decided to do the preparation of the indigo pot at new moon, and we decided to dye at the timing of full moon. In other words, all organisms would start to thrive with a full moon. And that was the same with indigo. And therefore, dyeing was something that was very close to the movement of the moon and the stars. And we were able to realize that connection. And so the indigo is used as the central dye at our studio.
And my students are lovingly mixing in the jar or dyeing. We have to stir in the jar every day, and my students are doing so. The hands will be dyed also, but the young people are enjoying it. I think those are the younger ladies, so they might have felt embarrassing, but not the opposite. So they are lovingly mixing in the jar, and still center of dyeing action is indigo dyeing. So those things happened one after another. And Goethe's color theory or Steiner's, those had great lessons and a description. I did understand clearly through my own experience. However, I wanted to some knowledge in Japan, not only the analytical thoughts or contemplation alone, something beyond the word description, some colorful space might have been preserved somewhere in Japan in its history. Mr. Aki Ihara, he is the scholar of colors in Japan from the ancient times of era up to the modern era. He has studied those from the Kojiki, Kokin, Shinkokin collections of the Japanese short poems, or the tales of Genji, or those from the 7th century, 6th century up to date. There are mentioning of different kinds of colors. Millions of names of the colors are recorded, and he was the scholar. And I think Japan is such a rare country which has lots of detailed scale of tone of colors. And I had the book written by him, and there was the name for the different color in the 7th century, 8th century. In the aristocratic era, there was the prosperity, and for the palace court lady have the 12 layers of different colors of a kimono, as you can see in the picture for the section of the tales of Genji. Together with the Lady Sannomiya, Prince Genji had the baby born. However, Prince Genji is sad because several points we can see the red spots. Mr. Shirayoshi was the scholar for the literature. I learned about the tale of Genji. Then this color of red is representing the sadness and the sufferings or pains of the Prince Genji. I was so impressed because if you have read the tales of Genji, you might know that is the story of describing the colorful, elegant court living, but also that has the deep insight of thinking, especially in the latter half. The different colors were mentioned in the beginning, however, all those disappeared in the end. Towards the end, without color, all the sentences are written. That seems to be very much like Buddhism in Japan. Towards the end, color disappeared to the end. So colors are not eternal. That's so fragile, disappearing in its fate, and it dies from plants are the origins of Japanese colors. And Japanese poems collected in the 6th century, 7th century, those were mentioned in the Japanese poems. And the Japanese inherited those intertwined expression of the different detail of the different colors, generation after generation. In the tale of Genji, that is the story of colors. For example, Lady Purple or the Prince Genji, because that's the contrast of the purple and the light, that means the yellow. So that's complement each other. So there is a secret of color contrast is embedded in the tale of Genji. I think a tale of Genji is the work of color rare to be found in the world. Makura no Soshi, or the essay in the 7th century, well, that has the vivid description of the colors. That's the sentences of essay, however, that communicated to us the vivid colors of thousands of kinds. Where do we have this Japanese culture with color? We have the Japanese island from south to the north. We have lots of seasonal changes. We are surrounded by the sea. In that surroundings, we see the natural colors which are transient. That has nurtured Japanese culture, and those literary work or poems were created with a lots of variety of colors. In the Edo period, after the 16th century, now those are more complex. And for example, we have two kinds, the celebration or mourning or darker, or especially darker category in opposed to the brilliant color for celebration. In the darker category, for example, we have the 48 kinds of brown and hundreds kinds of gray. We have that many. And that means the Japanese have the ability to identify 100 kinds of gray. Probably foreigners will say, we don't have 100 kinds of gray, gray is a gray. However, we have the gray from the zircova or the gray dyed from the plum trees. So those, each plants have the different gray. And we were able to identify different each type of gray. As I mentioned, this is the mystery. But those plants are living, they have lives. So therefore, the best color can be obtained only once throughout the year. For example, this color can be given to us only this year of autumn. And that timing is different for each of the plants, from the fruits, from leaves, or from roots. We can have different colors. For example, roots or the madder roots and also gromwell, those have the colors from root. That's unique, beautiful colors from roots of madder and gromwell. Very strong, intense. Although intense, but purple is very, very special color from gromwell. We stamped upon the roots of gromwell. We placed our own body weight, and then beautiful purple can be produced. Just like indigo, I think. That means the person of dyeing should have the good character of the integrity. Otherwise, you will never get the beautiful color of purple. Very difficult to produce the pure purple. So that is the test for the dyers or weavers. Sometimes we have too much of the difficult that we are not qualified to. For purple, I think in my own life, seldom I got satisfied. But in the ancient times, the great color of purple was made. In the 6th or 7th century, that they had the purple field that was written in the poem, or the name of the bamboo forest, the purple woods, or the purple field, that is remaining as the name of a location in Kyoto. And then in the 6th century, the prince or princess went for the hunting together. That was recorded in the Manyoshu. That means the compilation of 10,000 of leaves. That is the compilation of the Japanese poems in the 6th century. And the purple was such a precious color, and that had been admired. But now, those plants disappeared little by little, and we have just a limited number of gromwell. And the safflower is also the true safflower is in the northeast in Japan, but the safflower is the only one with the flower petal. I said the flower petal cannot produce the color, but this safflower is the only exception. Flower petal on this picture are used, but very much fragile. It fades away quite easily. Color disappears quickly. However, in the 16th, 17th century, or in those days, they had the beautiful color from the safflower, and that cloth is still vividly remaining here. Why? Because they had a luxury of time and the money and the human efforts. So that's why that has been produced through the history before the modern society. So that color is so precious. I love this red color from the safflower, and I am attracted strongly to. And with that motivation, this is my Hime, Dancing Princess. This is my art work, but it's not the just of the colors of the safflower. In the medieval time, people did produce beautiful color from safflower. That means that they worked strenuously hard for their landlords. Because of those power, they had the liberty to do everything for the art. But I am just an independent artist, so I have the limit for what I can do. For dyeing, it's not just a simple action of dyeing and weaving. That is the tool or the convenience, but we happen to walk on the path of that profession, but we are drawn into the deeper side of the universe. And how should we get intertwined with nature, between human beings and the universe? I seem to get a clue, but not for sure. Perhaps in my own life of length, I will not be able to go into the deeper side. Therefore, rather than I pursue, I would like to convey the message to the younger generation. After March the 11th, that means from the after time of the Great Japan East earthquake. In that era, because of the radioactive pollution, some people say that they can never use the plant-derived dyes anymore because of pollution. And into the future, that might be repeated many often times. And then what would happen to plants? Plants have been so generous to human beings. They have given us colors for free. However, they would finally get angry. What do we human beings do to nature? We are just depriving their lives of those plants or nature. I think that rather than co-biosis, we should co-live together, but we are just exploiting them. We just use them. We dig out the treasure from nature, and we want to have the greedy, more pleasant, enjoyable work for the luxurious purpose. That is the general trend in the world direction. And you might think that the old lady is saying something strange thing, but still I want to emphasize this is very important, probably universal, and that will be constantly important throughout the time. I think that warning was given by the East-North Japan earthquake. In Japan, we used to have nature, we were embraced by nature, and we, especially Northeast Japan people, nurtured nature. But in the metropolitan Tokyo, people didn't care for nature. They just consumed energy or many other things. So we are also living in the urban cities, but the people who were taking care of nature, they got the damage of the pollution. They are losing the blessing from nature. And now we had the young students getting together to open up the school. So this is the picture of my school. Now less and less Japanese wear kimono, so therefore no meaning to produce the kimono anymore. What should we do? Well, what we regard as important treasure for Japanese is the tradition of colors, tradition of the plant-derived dyeing, making a cloth manually by our hands. I want to convey this message to children, elementary school. I hope that that will be in the curriculum for elementary school as a subject matter. Awesome spirit for nature, respect for nature, warm feeling towards nature, that should be given in lessons to children. I am very old. I am probably soon closing my life. And so I didn't have courage to start the school. However, young people had the energy and they pushed me and my internal motivation surged up. But I had no idea whether I can get the students at all. Then, unexpectedly, many got determined to attend my school. And all those are lay persons. They didn't know at all at the beginning for weaving or the dyeing. However, even before 1 year, they produced a wonderful kimono weaving, and at the graduation ceremony, they wore those kimono, and that was the amazing event for me. More than what I imagined. Such a joy I had in my life. If human beings, people, once we got determined, then anybody can weave the kimono and anybody can dye with the hands. If I can leave this message of my experience, perhaps the world could have changed. Great two other laureates had an enormous contribution to the world. So you might feel that what old lady is doing in a little space. However, plants are generous, wonderful. Beautiful colors were given for free, and we are embraced by their generosity. And we want to tell the audience of my message, including younger people, I am truly grateful for today. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, once again, here the flower bouquet is presented to laureate Miss Fukumi Shimura. Thank you very much indeed. Again, a big applause to Ms. Shimura.